Yes, our diversity can lead to tension. And throughout our history there have been heated debates. About immigration and assimilation in both of our countries. But even as these debates can be difficult, we fundamentally recognize that our patchwork heritage is an enormous strength that in a world which will only grow smaller and more interconnected, the example of our two nations says it is possible for people to be united by their ideals. Instead of divided by their differences, that it's possible for hearts to change and old hatreds to pass. That it's possible for the sons and daughters of former colonies to sit here as members of this great parliament, and for the grandson of a Kenyan who served as a cook in the British Army to stand before you as President of the United States. That is what defines us. That is why the young men and women in the streets of Damascus and Cairo still reach for the rights our citizens enjoy. Even if they sometimes differ with our policies. As two of the most powerful nations in the history of the world, we must always remember that the true source of our influence hasn't just been the size of our economies. Or the reach of our militaries, or the land that we've claimed. It has been the values that we must never waver in defending around the world, the idea that all beings are endowed by our Creator with certain rights that cannot be denied. That is what forged our bond in the fire of war, a bond made manifest by the friendship between two of our greatest leaders. Churchill and Roosevelt had their differences. They were keen observers of each other's blind spots and shortcomings, if not always their own. And they were hard-headed about their ability to remake the world. But what joined the fates of these two men at that particular moment in history was not simply a shared interest in victory on the battlefield. It was a shared belief in the ultimate triumph of human freedom and human dignity, a conviction that we have a say in how this story ends. This conviction lives on in their people today. The challenges we face are great. The work before us is hard. But we have come through a difficult decade. And whenever the tests and trials ahead may seem too big or too many, let us turn to their example, and the words that Churchill spoke on the day that Europe was freed. In the long years to come, not only will the people of this island but, the world, wherever the bird of freedom chirps in the human heart, look back to what we've done. And they will say, do not despair, do not yield, march straight forward. With courage and purpose, with humility and with hope, with faith in the promise of tomorrow. Let us march straight forward together, enduring allies in the cause of a world that is more peaceful, more prosperous, and more just. Thank you very much. Barack Obama. Speech on job creation and economic growth at the Brookings Institution. Delivered December 8, 2009, Washington, D. C. Thank you so much, Strobe, for your extraordinary leadership here at Brookings. And thanks to all of you in attendance. Almost exactly 1 year ago, on a frigid winter's day, I met with my new economic team at the headquarters of my presidential transition offices in Chicago. And over the course of 4 hours, my advisors presented an analysis of where the economy at that time stood. Accompanied by a chilling set of charts and graphs, predicting where we might end up. It was an unforgettable series of presentations. Christy Romer, who's here today, tapped to head the Council of Economic Advisors. As well as Larry Summers, who I'd chosen to head the National Economic Council. Described an imminent downturn comparable in its severity to almost nothing since the 1930s. Tim Gaithner, my incoming Treasury Secretary, reported that the financial system, shaken by the subprime crisis, had halted almost all lending, which in turn threatened to pull the broader economy in a downward spiral. Peter Orszag, my incoming budget director, closed out the proceedings with an entirely dismal report on the fiscal health of the country, with growing deficits and debt stretching to the horizon. Having concluded that it was too late for me to request a recount, I tasked my team with mapping out a plan to tackle the crisis on all fronts. It wasn't long after that meeting, as we shaped this economic plan, that we began to see some of these forecasts materialize. Over the previous year, it was obvious that folks were facing hard times. As I traveled across the country during the long campaign, I would meet men and women bearing the brunt of not only a deepening recession, but also years, even decades of growing strains on middle-class families. But now the country was experiencing something far worse. Our gross domestic product, the sum total of all that our economy produces, fell at the fastest rate in a quarter century. $5 trillion of Americans' household wealth evaporated in just 12 weeks as stocks. Pensions and home values plummeted. We were losing an average of 700,000 jobs each month, equivalent to the population of the state of Vermont. That was true in December, January, February, March. The fear among economists across the political spectrum that was that we were rapidly plummeting towards a second Great Depression. So, in the weeks and months that followed, we undertook a series of difficult steps to prevent that outcome. And we were forced to take those steps largely without the help of an opposition party. Which, unfortunately, after having presided over the decision-making that had led to the crisis, decided to hand it over to others to solve. We acted to get lending flowing again so businesses could get loans to buy equipment. And ordinary Americans could get financing to buy homes and cars, to go to college, and to start or run businesses. We enacted measures to stem the tide of foreclosures in our housing market. Helping responsible homeowners stay in their homes and helping to stop the broader decline. In home values, which was eating away at what tends to be a family's largest asset. To achieve this, and to prevent economic collapse, we were forced to extend assistance to some. of the very banks and financial institutions whose actions had helped precipitate the turmoil. We also took steps to prevent the rapid dissolution of the American auto industry, which faced a crisis partly. Of its own making to prevent the loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs during an already fragile, shaky time. These were not decisions that were popular or satisfying, these were decisions that were necessary. Now, even as we work to address the crises in our banking sector, in our housing market, and in our auto industry, we also began attacking our economic crisis on a broader front. Less than 1 month after taking office, we enacted the most sweeping economic recovery package in history. The American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. The Recovery Act was divided into 3 parts. One-third went for tax relief for small businesses and 95% of working families. Another third was for emergency relief to help folks who've borne the brunt of this recession. We extended or increased unemployment benefits for more than 17 million Americans. Made health insurance 65% cheaper for families relying on COBRA. And for state and local governments facing historic budget shortfalls as demand for services went up and revenues went down. We provided assistance that has saved the jobs of hundreds of thousands of teachers and public school workers, firefighters, and police officers. The last third of the Recovery Act is for investments to put Americans to work doing the work that America needs done. Doubling our capacity in renewable energy like wind and solar. computerizing medical records to save money and lives, providing the largest boost to medical research in history. Renovating classrooms and school laboratories, and upgrading roads and railways as part of the largest. Investment in infrastructure since the creation of the interstate highway system half a century ago. And even as the Recovery Act has created jobs and spurred growth. We have not let up in our efforts to take every responsible action to get the economy growing and America working. This fall, I signed into law more than $30 billion in tax cuts for struggling businesses. Extended an effective tax credit for home buyers, and provided additional unemployment insurance for 1 million Americans. And the Treasury is continuing to adapt our financial stability plan. Helping to facilitate the flow of small credit to small businesses and families. In addition, we're working to break down barriers and open overseas markets so our companies can better compete globally. Creating jobs in America by exporting our products around the world. Now, partly as a result of these and other steps, we are in a very different place today than we were 1 year ago. We may forget, but we're in a very different place. We can safely say that we are no longer facing the potential collapse. Of our financial system, and we've avoided the depression many feared. Our economy is growing for the first time in a year. And the swing from contraction to expansion since the beginning of the year is the largest in nearly 3 decades.